This is the full RWBY re-edit. Now the point of this exercise is to leave the show as intact as possible, except to make it work as a piece of storytelling. Now I'm gonna take Season 1, Volumes 1, 2, and 3, as a single unit, and just rearrange the scenes while adding as little as physically possible. So first things first, we need to cut the intro narration and just open on Torchwick and his goons stalking menacingly towards the dust shop. Because the intro narration is pointless, now the main thing that needs to change about the first episode is that Torchwick should be arrested. Because in the context of the show as a whole, get it? Like a hole where scripts go to die. He doesn't do anything until the off-season between Volumes 1 and 2. And in the context of Volume 1, he just randomly reappears in the last episode to fail again. So anyway, we just cut right here, and instead of Torchwick scurrying up this ladder, let's just say RWBY used her speed semblance to dodge around this bullet and ends with her scythe at his neck or something, and then, you know, we'll show Glinda come down to arrest him, and then the camera will fade out on this vehicle making its escape. So what this does is it gives Ozpin a really good reason for bumping RWBY up 2 grades. Episode 2 can stay exactly the same for all I care, but in Episode 3 is where things start getting boggled. Instead of Ozpin's speech, we're going to replace that with Ozpin's speech from Volume 2, and add some establishing dialogue about the tournament. That way, we get to establish that all 4 kingdoms are sending students to Beacon. This covers up the plot hole of Sun arriving a full semester before the rest of his teammates. Instead, we're going to have him arrive late because he's a rebel who doesn't give a fuck. Now, before the ballroom slumber party scene, we're going to throw in this introduction of Cinder, Emerald, and Mercury. And that way, the Welcome to Beacon scene will be at the beginning of the show because we're not animals over here. Now, the first half of Volume 1, Episode 4 is relevant because it introduces Lai, Nora, and Pyrrha, but, like, the end of that episode all the way to Episode 8 is just trash and a half. I mean, the show is called RWBY. Nobody is questioning who's gonna end up on a team with who. There's no reason to take, like, half an hour to only accomplish that. The only good part of these episodes is establishing that Nora's a blast and that Weiss is a cunt who can't fight. And, of course, Birdie No. So we'll take the relevant bits of the Relic Hunt and the relevant bits of the Jean arc and just smush them together into one long scene that doesn't suck. Hopefully. So yeah, you got landing strategy, Birdie No, Pyrrha pins Jean to a tree, but then he gets found by Team Cardinal. And they get him out of the tree and drag him off to the Scorpion Cave because they think the relics are in there and they make them go fetch them. Jean stands up for himself, but then he'll get his ass kicked, and then Pyrrha will show up and chase off Team Cardinal. As a result, Jean will get indignant that Pyrrha thought he needed help.
I want to help you.
You think I need help?
That intercut with RWBY and Weiss's scene from Episode 6. Now, this is a little front-loaded, but it resolves a lot of issues. First would be the actual pacing of the Jean arc. I mean, it's a time skip followed by a flashback. That's not an issue anymore. And the Jean arc, as it stood, was just a comedy of errors. Now Jean is actually trying to do things on his own, so he's allowed to be pridefully indignant that anyone would suggest that he needs help. Also, the Jean arc sort of unintentionally painted Cardin as the smartest character in the class, which makes everyone else hard to care about. Now he's just a lazy asshole, which is better. And, oh god, the whole Ursa mess with sending backup away from the fight.
You two, go with them. There could be more.
That whole debacle is gone now. You know, cutting like 90% of the Jean arc fixes a lot. We don't get Pyrrha demonstrating her semblance in front of Weiss, but that's fine, it never came up. Pyrrha would ask why Jean didn't use his aura to defend against Cardin, and then we would get that explanation while they were walking through the Scorpion Cave. Then, you know, Jean will get flicked, and everybody shows up at the relic place and picks up their thingies, and then
Time we left.
But the scorpion that was chasing Pyrrha shows up, blocking the path. Ooh, wow. Amazing. What a twist. This fixes them being idiots like 4 times in a row.
Run and live. Man, we gotta get over there.
I have a plan.
And then the action scene happens because, what, I mean, is it not gonna happen? Team assignment as usual, and then instead of this Torchwick scene, we would get a scene where Adam and a bunch of White Fang guys break Torchwick out of jail. Bam! The White Fang is immediately a credible threat, and Torchwick is shown to be just as necessary as he is ineffective. And then episode 15 happens, because episode 15 needs to happen before episode 10. And that would be like the first volume break, like right after Blake runs away. So there we could have the illusion of the passages from time. Volume 2 would begin with all the school shit, like the scene from Oobleck's class, Pyrrha sparring with Cardinal and Mercury, the cafeteria scene, all of Jean and Pyrrha's melodrama, and then finally Jean apologizing to Pyrrha and asking her to train him.
I'm sorry.
Normal mundane school stuff would take up the first act of Volume 2, and it would end with episodes 9 and 10 from Volume 1. That would complete Weiss's arc and prompt her to initiate a search for Blake so she could apologize and reunite her team. Realistically, only a couple weeks would pass, but it's still better than the time skip we got at the end of Volume 1 anyway. Now we would get the first half of the Volume 1 finale. But instead of going to the docks, Sun and Blake would go to the White Fang recruitment rally from Volume 2, Episode 4. And Penny and Ruby looking for Blake would lead into the Penny is actually a robot scene from Volume 2, which would in turn lead into the mech chase and fight scene. Now, to keep as much of the action intact as possible, you could combine that mech fight with the fight from the docks in Volume 1. So after Yang punches the mech, Blake and Sun could beat the crap out of Torchwick before Neo comes to rescue him. After that, we'd kind of push around the last half of episode 5 so that Blake would be stressing out about the White Fang in the southeast, so Ruby, Weiss, and Yang would promise to deal with it, like, I don't know, tell Ozpin or something, if she calmed down and went to the dance. So then we get Volume 2, Episode 6, and Pura's scene from Volume 7, largely unmolested. Everything that happens from this point on in the show proper has to change, like, a lot, because it doesn't make any sense at all. First, Ruby should fall down while she's wearing her high heels, because logic. Then Cinder would get away with hacking the CCT. Ozpin telling Team RWBY to go to the southeast is stupid. It should be Ironwood because Ozpin won't let him handle it his way. Episode 9 is okay. Episode 10 is completely unsalvageable, as is most of Episode 11. So in lieu of all those episodes, Team RWBY would sneak away from Oobleck in the middle of the night to investigate the White Fang leads, where they would find the entrance to the Underground Railroad, where all of the Faunus are fighting to win a war that will end slavery. Holy crap, I didn't even realize that connection during my Volume 2 review. What do you know? Torchwick panics and starts the train. Team RWBY gets forcibly pulled into the train cars to initiate the boss fights. And most importantly, the Grim Breach needs to be changed to compensate for the retcons in Volume 3.
Grim invasions, violent extremists, a destructive sociopath.
You've got to add White Fang members and Torchwick fighting against the Beacon students. And what I think would really sell it is that when Team Coffee shows up, they only save Team RWBY and Juniper. Like, they have to put all of their effort into extracting the Beacon teams while civilians are getting eaten by Grim. And then when Glinda shows up, she just walls off, like, entire city blocks full of Grim and people getting eaten. That way the breach was actually a failure to protect civilians, instead of just a boring shitty fight that was so anticlimactic they had to retcon it in Volume 3.
His colossal failure to protect Vale when the Grim invaded its streets.
And as a result, the council decides to push up the schedule of the tournament sooner, just to try to take people's minds off the invasion. And now that's Volumes 1 and 2 in less time than it takes to watch Volume 2. And Volume 3 is just seasoned to taste, I guess. Personally, I would say that the council's decision to move the tournament up also included only scheduling the final bracket. That would completely bypass the first 5 episodes of Volume 3. So my suggestion is to start with 7, and then watch 6, and then 8 through 12. But if you're really a glutton for punishment, I mean, you could always watch those 5 episodes. They actually fit into the story now. So the full review is just taking a little longer than expected. This only took like 2 days to work on, and it's also a promise I made a really long time ago. The Volume 3 review will be out soon, I just needed to buy a little time, so, you know, enjoy this, have fun with it.